Hi, Flosstube. My name is Mary, and I am known as A Mary Stitcher, both here on Flosstube and also on Instagram. I'd like to welcome you to my channel about cross stitch. Every now and then I'll do some other things and talk about some other topics, but mostly it's all cross stitch all the time. So, it's been a while since my last update. I apologize for being gone, but life's been lifing on me, so that was just the way it is. Lots has happened. I've had some good stitching since the last time I checked in, so hopefully we'll catch up today. The first thing I have for you is not a finished object, sorry, not a fully finished object, but a stitch finish. So that is Modern Folk Embroideries, Put a Bird on It. This is a SAL that's been going on that's hosted by EJ of Sunshine Stitchers and Sheila, also of Sunshine Stitchers. Oh boy, words. Sorry about that. Anyway, I kind of raced ahead and finished because I hadn't had a finish and I was having so much fun stitching it. I just kept on going, kept stitching on this one and got a stitch finish. Now this is something that was actually charted as monochromatic, but there's this digital rendering on the cover that kind of gives an idea of what it would be like if you stitched it in some multicolored designs. I went a little bit crazy. I got out the whole crayon box pretty much and stitched this. Every single motif pretty much is in a different color. And these are all silks from my collection of silk floss that I've acquired over the years. And so here she is. Now this is, again, in my silks, stitched on 18 count salted caramel from number 12 Stitch Co. And you can see that I've just gone a little bit bonkers with the colors, but I like it. It's just kind of fun and happy. The one thing that were in somewhat more muted colors were the birds. I decided not to color the birds the same as all the motifs they were in. I went ahead and stitched the birds individually in a little bit more bird-like colors, some black, some tan, a little white for what I'm guessing is a swan or a goose up here in this corner. But anyway, this was really terrific. I have to say that I really enjoy doing Quakers on Aida fabric, which is what this is, because it's really important that you be precise on a Quaker. And if you get off that one thread when you're doing a linen, it's really hard. There's a lot, I do a lot more frogging. I'm sure it's a me problem. It's not something that has anything to do with the fabric. But for me, I can go faster on a Quaker if I'm doing it on Aida. But I like a real high count Aida, like a 20. So that was fun. Anyway, I'm really excited and I want to thank Sheila and EJ for hosting such a fun SAL. Can't wait to see what they come up with for next year, but got some time to go before we face that. Now, I have another stitch finish. This one is also a SAL. A lot of SALs going on this year. So this particular one is from the Across the Pond Stitch and Chat Facebook group. And the SAL has been hosted by Sarah of Sew Me Sarah. And the stitch is one stitch at a time from La Di Da. And people are doing this in a lot of different ways, but this is another one where it was broken down into little monthly segments so we could kind of do it in bite-sized chunks throughout the corner of the year. And again, I edited a little bit because what I think I'm going to do with mine is I think I'm going to make it into a drum. So I took out this lower section and just stitched the house, which I changed to a blue color, and the trees and birds. Now, these three motifs that were here but not here kind of made me a little bit bonkers. I like a little bit of symmetry. So what I did is I put one of these symbols on this side, one on this side, and then moved one of the birds from here over into the tree. So just so that my old symmetry brain would feel a little better. And like I say, I think I'm going to do it like this so that it can be a drum. Ooh, drum, maybe a spool cover. Just depends on if I have the right size spool. So this one came out like this. And I love the blue house. It was not my idea. There were several other stitchers that were doing the blue house, and I thought, hey, why not me? So that's what I did. And it turned out really well. And like I say, I just liked it with the birds and the two little symbols on the sides. Just, it looked good to me. I really think it's pretty, and regardless of whether I put it on a spool or turn it into a drum, it'll go, really, it should be good. So that's what I've got. Now this particular one was stitched on 40 count linen in the color Greek statue, and this is from graham cracker linens. And graham cracker fabrics are dyed primarily by Graham, the son of Teresa Vanette, who is also known as Kitten Stitcher, also known as Shakespeare's Peddler. And her son, now actually I think both sons are doing some dyeing, comes up with beautiful fabrics, really some great sampler colors, and always nice fabric. So those are my two stitch finishes since I've seen you. Now, as for whips, works in progress, there are a few. I've really been trying to work down some of my whips this year, and so I haven't had a lot of new starts. And what that means is some of these whips will be familiar if you've been here before. But I made some pretty good progress since I've seen you last. First is my oldest whip. She's been with me for a long time, and this is M.H. Smith, 1890. This is from Dutch Treat Designs. This is a Bristol sampler that is from, you know, the famous orphanage where so many of these Bristols came from. And it's a terrific chart, but as you can see, it is a big girl. And as I do with so many of my other charts, I decided to edit a little bit and make it fit my life a little bit better. I will say the reason I chose this one is because I was born M.H. Smith, actually. So that was the reason I gravitated towards this particular one. But if you can see, there are about a bazillion alphabets in here. And I noticed as I was stitching them that some of them were very, very similar to other ones that were further up. And I didn't really like that. I like having the variety of alphabets. So what I did is I pulled out some of the ones that were the most duplicating of one previous to them. And that made the alphabet section a little smaller. Then I decided that I was going to move the squirrel, and the flower pot over to the sides here instead of having these bands there. And what I'm going to end up doing is between the squirrel and the flower pot, I'm going to have one box that has the bands that I like the best. Then I'll pick up my favorite motifs from here. I will put M.H. Smith's name and I'll put my name. I'm going to have them both kind of running along below. So that's where we're headed, and now I will show you my progress. And that is, she's a big girl. There we go. Oh, good grief. Didn't want to grab it that way. There we go. Okay, so from behind the bed sheet here. Okay, there I'm getting it all on. So you can see that since when I was in my last episode, I had just done part of the flower vase and I think one of these motifs. So I was able to finish the vase of flowers, do one of these two motifs, although I got bored and didn't do the bottom two yet. I decided I would zoom over and do the squirrel. And so there's the beginning of the squirrel. He has no fluffy tail yet, that's coming, but I've got the majority of his body done. So that's M.H. Smith 1890. And you can see I'm going to have a good wide section in between where I can put those bands, and they should look really pretty there. It's going to end up with more of a wider profile, but I like that. I like that sometimes. So that's where we're headed with that. All right. Now, another whip, put myself back together here. Another whip that I've got going is from Jeannine, the blue flower. And this one is Forest Home. And, oops, see if I can get the glare off there. You can see it's really a pretty chart. You know, everything I love, birds, animals, trees, flowers, you know, what's not to love. And this is one that originally I think started out as I think it was from Acorns and Thread. They had it as an exclusive for a while. It might have been at one of their retreats. But as soon as I found out that it was available, I went and snapped it up. And I had hoped I could finish this in July, but just didn't happen. Wasn't in the cards for me to finish 3 this month. So, this is where I am. You can see I'm kind of a long way from finishing. And one of the things about Jeannine's designs are beautiful, and there's always so much good texture and color, and she does animals really, really well. But in order to make that happen, there's a lot of stitches. And so you can see there's a lot, and I have a fair bit more because I still haven't done our friend the deer. I'm just starting on this tree here. So I've got this whole lower corner in here still needs to be done. So I'm probably only about 2/3 done. But I will forge ahead because it's really a pretty sampler, and I want to have, well, it's not really technically a sampler, but it's a pretty design, and I want to have it on my wall. So here it is one more time, my forest home. And I'm doing it in pretty much all the called for colors. Anything that was changed had to do with maybe a white that wasn't showing up quite right, or something along those lines. But in this particular case, let me see what my fabric is. Again, this one's on Aida, and you'll notice if you've been with me for a little while, I go back and forth between Aida and linen all the time. I love Aida and I love linen. It just depends on the feeling. I very frequently will do Aida for seasonal stitches because it allows me to go faster and I can get them done faster, so I have more seasonal things. Again, I like to use Aida for Quakers, but I go back and forth. There's no better or not better thing. As far as the fabric is concerned, if I like the color, if I think the design is going to go well on it, that's what I pick. I know there's a lot of people who just are all Aida or all linen or all even weave for that matter, your Luganas and those kind of things. And that's great. There's no wrong way to do it. No cross stitch, please, I promise. Or if they are, they'd have come after me long, long ago. Look, I have a rogue needle that fell off of my needle minder, but not off of this. Wow. Okay, there we go. So that is Forest Home. Now, my next one is Shimmering Mermaid. This is a Mirabilia, and I'm sorry, I won't take her out of the plastic. I think this is a retired chart, pretty sure it is, but I was able to find it in good shape and started this a while back. I'll tell you what, of all the mermaids to start, I probably picked the hardest one because you can see that her little mermaid tail is about 5 or 6 different colors, and there's Krynic in there, and there's a lot of color changing. I mean, this is no joke. It's gorgeous, but I'm going a lot slower on this one just because it's a lot of color changes, and I'm a booger, I'm a baby. So that's just the way it is. I don't always want to do all those color changes, but I love it, and it's gonna be great once it's done. And I am stitching this one on Picture This Plus Title, and I'm going with 36 count. I can't do 2 threads, and Lord knows on a piece like this, doing 2 threads might be the death of me. So I have done this on 36 count, and the fabric is you're not really getting the real color. There's very much sort of a tropical aqua-y blue color, and it's reading a lot more gray, probably because I've got direct sunlight in one side of the room and deep shade in the other, so it's messing with my light. But what I did this time is I worked in the hair. I found a mistake or two that I made and had to pull some things out. So, I'm doing the best I can. When she's done, she'll be fabulous, but don't hold your breath for that being in the next month or 2. It's going to be a little while probably on this one, but I'll get her done. All right, next we have another SAL. This is a SAL that's over now, but I love the piece so much. This is also another modern folk embroidery from Jacob de Graaf. This piece is just a showstopper, and I will tell you what, in the recent online retreat that was hosted by Webb of Lindy Stitches and her fabulous crew of retreat elves, I met a gal, and I cannot for the life of me think of her name, but she had finished this piece, and it, first of all, the stitching was incredibly beautiful, just glorious. Second of all, she had had it framed and made it into an actual clock. It was so beautiful. She had the framer, I mean, talk about a giant leap of faith. She talked to the framer, she bought the clock pieces, or the the clockworks and the hands and all that, and had it framed as a clock. And it was breathtaking. I don't know if I would have the level of trust required to have a framer attempt to pierce my stitching and not mess it up completely. I think I would be scared out of my wits, but gosh, the payoff for her was amazing because it's really one of the prettiest stitches I've seen. It was great. And I wish to heck I could remember her name. Gosh, really a nice gal too. At some point I will figure it out and I will mention it again because it was that good of a piece that you need to look it up and go find her. So that's the design for No Time Like the Present. And it was charted to be a two-color design. I did a third color in mine just because I'm weird and I have to do things my own way. But here's what we've got. This is the progress. Now, when we last saw each other, I think I had just started to do part of this blue band here, but subsequent to that, I have done more of the blue, I've done the center, I've done the numbers on the clock, started to do some of the moon phases, and just for fun, just barely begun to sort of run up the border. What I did is I used three colors. These are Gloriana silks, and the blue is Northern Lights, the green is Granny Smith Apple, and the brown is Hazelnut, all by Gloriana. I just happened to have those from previous projects I had done, and I had enough of them and was able to get enough of them to be sure that I'm going to have enough to finish this design. But you can see it's really a pretty design. The main reason I added the third color is I just didn't want green deer or blue deer and blue squirrels. I don't, I'm not usually that literal, but in this particular design, I just thought it would be prettier if I sort of gently folded in a third color. So, in this particular case, aside from the Gloriana silks, the fabric is 40 count platinum Zweigart. Good old platinum, man. I love that color, and I haven't seen much of platinum lately, but it just is so good with so many different colors of floss. Go for it if you can find it. It's wonderful. All right, now, if you're sensing a theme, that theme being I really like modern folk embroidery charts, as I've worked through my whips, it's become more obvious that I really like those charts. And the next whip I have, the next work in progress is, hey look, Modern Folk Embroidery by Jacob de Graaf. Now this was a SAL in 2020. However, in 2020 I hadn't yet come back to stitching. I was off in oblivion, didn't even know that some of these designers existed, didn't know there was such a thing as Flosstube. I was a monogamous stitcher when I stitched in my previous life, because that's how you did it. You bought a kit, you stitched it, or you bought a chart, you stitched it in DMC on Crunchy Ada, or because that was what we had in those days. So I found this when Sarah of Sew Me Sarah was working on hers, and I watched her go through hers. She did it all in red. It's so beautiful. And I was so inspired when I saw it that I thought, hey, I need to have that. And I ordered the PDF. So that's why this one's not pretty. It's just printed in black and white. And because when I saw it, I was like, I have to have this right now. And I don't think I had colored ink in all the right colors, so I went ahead and printed it in black and white. But anyway, it's a great design. Again, it's got that wide format that I really like. And I decided, because I'm a fool, that I would rechart one or two of these houses to resemble houses that our family has lived in. You know, we'll see how it comes out. But where I've gotten to since the last time we met is I have finished the square frame there in the center. I've got my border all the way across, and I've begun the very first of the houses, which is one of those little tiny ones. And it just happens that we own a little cottage here in town, and it's very similar, or just super simple, like the little cottage that was in there. So with very little effort, I'm going to be able to modify Jacob's cottage to look like our cottage. And then I have another house that we're going to do too. So again, this is a labor of love. It's going to take a little longer because as I chart things out and look at them, and then I go back and I have to rechart them. A couple of the other houses that we've lived in are going to require a little more change to the pattern. So I want to take my time with that. And then you'll see it again as I press on. Let's see, what have we got? Gosh, this might be maybe not my last whip. We'll see. This is M. Satterthwaite. And this is a design by Teresa Vanette, also known as Shakespeare's Peddler, for her chart designs and her books. She's got a couple of lovely books of samplers. Teresa just seems like such a nice gal, and I love her designs. And this one I love because it's square, nice, easy to find frames for squares, and it's Quaker, which I love. Now this Quaker I did not choose to do on an Aida. I went with linen on this, partly because I just had a piece of linen that I really liked, and that's the way I went. But again, I love the design. It's got the swans, it's got birds and flowers. It's got a lot, but it's not like super dense, not wall to wall. So I decided rather than do it in black, which it's beautiful in black, or in red, because I've been working on my red sampler and it's so big that I'm trying to do monochromatics in a lot of other colors besides black and red. So what I decided to do was use a Vicky Clayton silk, and this color name is called Unmasked, and it is a really pretty kind of a teal color. And here's where I am on this design. So since I've seen you last, I think I've done the letters and I've done 2 of the motifs. And I did those when this was called for Whip Go 1 month. So again, it's just beautiful as can be. And I am excited to come back to it, but right now I'm trying to knock out some of my older whips, so that's what I've been doing. All right, so that is the end of the whips. Now, for those of you who like to see what people have gathered when they're between times, you are certainly welcome to do that. What I did is I attended, as I said before, the Lindy Stitch's Midsummer Stitch, which was just great. And I was lucky enough to get in when the shopping section opened and get the fabric that had been designed by Fiber on a Whim. This is Fiber on a Whim, and it is 36 count plum, which, as you can see, is just a really pretty purple color, and I do love some purple. And it's not so heavily modeled that it's going to distract. I could put all kinds of things on this, and in fact I could put a mirror on this because again I tend to sew my mirrors on 36 count. So that's one piece of fabric that I got, which was terrific. Then there was a special fabric that was designed by Bestitch Me, and this is it. Beep, sorry. And this is the linen, 36 count linen, and you can see the purples and pinks. A little bit, flip it over. So you can see good color flow, but not harsh. You know, the contract isn't so stark that you worry about it distracting from whatever you decide to stitch on it. But I absolutely think this is wonderful, and I like it so well that when I found out that they also had 20 count Aida, I scooted right in there and got some of the Aida as well. Because again, I stitch on Aida and linen. I go back and forth all the time and I just love them. And honestly, at some point, if my vision goes, Aida's going to be easier. So I'm gathering all the goodies. Also, during the Midsummer stitch, I picked up a couple of charts. They're just PDFs, so all you get is my little printouts. One is a tiny modernist, and this wasn't an exclusive, but it was one that I just really thought was pretty. And you know, tiny modernist designs are so often really fun. And so I picked up this one called Twilight Moon, and I can think of all different ways to go with this. I know that it was originally meant to go with a stitch pack that was available, and then they had a whole bunch of designers do it was called the Night Garden, that's what it was. It was called the Night Garden collection of flosses, I think. Anyway, I'll use flosses that I've got in my collection if I can't find the Night Garden. And honestly, the amount of different colors in that one, if you look at it, what's really most important if you want the look is to find a color for the moon, because that's the largest volume. You're going to see the variegation there. But as far as the other colors, the greens, that kind of a deep purpley color, and then a kind of a pearly white, we've all got those. I can go into my collection and I can find them probably in DMCs, probably in overdyes, possibly even in silks. So it's an easy one to just, you don't have to have these flosses to do this and have it still look really pretty. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it. The other one that I got is one that was designed for the event, and that is from Sprouting. I always want to say Sprouting Lupin because that's how the flower is pronounced, but from the people that I've seen online, they pronounce it Sprouting Lupine. So if that's what they're going with, I definitely respect that. So Sprouting Lupine, this is a design for the event called Verdant Reverie, and it's got this beautiful design for a long bell pull, or you can do a circular piece, or you could do some hybrid of the two, honestly. You could do a smaller whatever portion of this you wanted, because there is some variance between this and this and this. So it would be interesting to play around and see, how I end up doing it. But it's such a pretty design and the colors are so cheerful. I decided that that would be something I wanted to have. Now, my last item that I got for my collection is something that I stumbled on quite by accident. I was watching a floss tube, as I do while I'm stitching. I was watching a floss tube, and I cannot for the life of me remember the name of the gal, and I just need to start writing these things down because I feel like a ninny not remembering. But she was stitching a chart with the most beautiful ladybugs in it. Now, I like a good ladybug. I like all kinds of critters. But this was so beautiful and so realistic. It's an old out of print chart. The designer was back in the 90s, end of the 90s. And I honestly don't know if this one that I got is the exact same chart that she was doing or if she was doing another one, because this is a designer who had multiples that looked like, when you see a pin board where somebody has butterflies or bugs like pinned and hanging on the wall. Not my thing. But this is cool. And you can see that it's Professor Fizby's Wee Beasties, from something collection of Wee Beasties, and then there's different parts. And each one has a different set of animals. There's some where it's just one, there's one where it's a bee, and then there's also one where there's 3 bees. There's a number of them that are ladybugs. I just think that these are so cool. And I believe that the colors involved, yes they are, is 99% DMC and a teeny tiny bit of Kreinik. But it's done with DMCs and they're used to brilliant effect. I mean, the dimensions that you get from the way that these are marked out, it's just beautiful. And some of these were online going for a crazy price, and understandably, they're old, they're out of print. This one here is from 1999, I believe it is. And the company, it looks like it may be Pangea by Dimples Designs, but then it's Professor Fizby. Search under all of those. I'm kind of looking for another one that's also ladybugs that I would do to hang next to this one, or maybe just do all 6 of them in one really long row if I have a wall that requires such a thing. But I have to wait until the price, I find somebody who's a little bit realistic. Now, I will say some of these came in kits. And so some of the ones that are sky high are the ones where it's the entire kit. And there's one of like a scarab beetle that's really bright colors. Gosh, it's pretty. But this is kind of a cool thing. So it's one of those where you just put up a saved search on eBay and see what pops up. And if I can remember the name or find the name of the gal who's stitching these, I will mention it again in a future Flosstube, because hers was looking fantastic, and without having been so impressed by hers, because she held up one that she had finished, and maybe this is the one that she had already finished and she was stitching the companion piece. But either way, they're very cool. And if you have one of these that you don't want anymore, not this exact one, but one of the other ones in these series, send me a message. We'll talk. Thanks. Anyway, so that, as they say, is that. I think I've gotten caught up. Hopefully, I will be a little quicker to get back to you and keep you posted. I've got a lot of stitching to do. Summer's not over yet, so we'll see what comes through. But for now, I'm going to let you go, and I hope that you will hit the button, like, subscribe to my channel. It really makes a big difference. My little baby channel is growing bit by bit, and I'd love for you to come along. Thanks very much, and I hope that you have a great afternoon. And somehow I will close this. There we go. Bye.